So you are specialized in the conditioned transport market. What does that market look like today?
The conditioned rail transport market is very specific. So it's something that came forward from the original setup that we did for the Silkway. Over the last couple of years, we've seen a tremendous increase in volume and requests from customers to ship in reefer conditions eastbound and westbound. The market today for us is roughly 200 reefers per month eastbound. Westbound more than that, but we are focusing on eastbound at the moment. Why is that? Because in the past we saw a big gap between everything going east or coming west. Everything was based or focused on westbound. And that's, I think, where NSWL and KLG stepped in. Said, okay, that's a niche, that's a market that we can really excel in.
So what was the previous option and where do they need to make that change?
I think the need for reefer containers shipments has always been there. It's been very ocean driven. But we see a shift in demand for ocean. There's less availability of containers. It's difficult to get a booking arranged. There's simply not enough containers available in China to get the goods here. There are vessels that have been taken out of business, eventually coming back, but nobody knows when. The need for shipping has not diminished or has not gone away. So in order to fill that gap, they look for opportunities, and again, that opportunity is the Silk Road, is the solution that KLG offers.
Yeah, and this year we had the ban lifted for Russian transit for fresh goods.
Yeah.
And can you already see the results of that?
Yes, we can. We see customers up until recently were very reluctant to even try to even send out a sample shipment, a test shipment, but we now literally have one test shipment after the other for all the, let's say, bigger brands, bigger companies that we do. Whether it's food related or any other material, companies are a lot more open now that we've explained what the ban entailed, what we can do to bypass the ban operationally and commercially. So the first step, so to speak, the first hurdle is now gone.
What could you do to convince people that this is possible now?
Well, what we do is we're very open in the communication with the customer. So we explain in every detail what needs to be done to get your goods from A to B, in this case from somewhere in the EU into China. What documentation do we need? When do we need it? What other preparations do you as a customer need to make for us to be able to ship your goods into China? We explain to them very in a detailed manner how we cooperate with customs, not just on the requirements, but on the process itself, what steps need to be taken, what influence they can have on the outcome, what influence we have, what hurdles there still are, because let's face it, I think we've taken a big step by being now able to get goods from A to B through Russia with the embargo being lifted. But there's still a lot that needs to be done to make it even more efficient.
And what kind of things do you think of?
If you look at the documentation, the paperwork that's needed, the paperwork itself will not change, but in the way that it's handled, that is still something dating back to, let's say, in the 90s or the early teens. Steps are being taken, and not just with Russia, also with China and then some of the other countries. But those are key steps to even make it more viable for us to offer this solution to our customers. The infrastructure in general, depending on which side of the equation you are, is either very mature or still very basic. I think in the last 4 years we've all come a very long way, looking at specifically the other side, the Chinese side. The investments that have been done at the rail terminals are tremendous, where a couple of years ago everybody would be shipping into one terminal. We now have multiple options, and all terminals have identical capabilities, capacities. I think a lot of companies are now realizing that there's more to it than just the transportation itself. So we are offering this part of the equation, the shipping itself, the container itself, arrives in optimum condition, maintains the agreed temperature throughout the time frame agreed. We're doing everything we can to supply the container, bring it to the customer already on the agreed temperature or within the agreed frame, guarantee transportation, but there's so much more that needs to be done prior to shipping, or prior to loading of the container and thereafter. The part thereafter, we've covered that with our Chinese partners. We are now, since last year, part of Sinotrans, the number one transportation company in China. So with that, we've grown our coverage, our capability in China from 0 to 100 in literally a year. Capacity, capabilities as well. But there's a lot that needs to be done, like I said, from the shipper side. So shippers are now, for those that were not already aware, becoming more and more aware of what they need to do in preparation of shipment.
And what do they need to do?
What they need to do is they need to make sure that their products are already in an environment which is contained, which is controlled, to make the shipping ready or prepared.
In an environment, do you mean warehouses or
in the warehouse itself, or they can do things in packaging. The solution itself, transportation in a reefer under temperature controlled conditions, is a solution, but there are more things you can do. For example, in packaging or the warehousing conditions itself. And at KLG at the moment, we are looking into understanding those requirements or necessities to further help and aid our customers already in advance, other than just saying, okay, we have a container, we can help you ship it from A to B, but we always also support you on the pre-side and everything that comes afterwards.
Yeah.
To make it one cohesive solution.
Yeah. And do you think that holds customers back into opting for this modality?
I think by leveling with your customer, by playing open book, by telling them exactly what steps need to be taken, and by showing them that we understand or are willing to understand their entire supply chain and how this specific part contributes to that, I think it definitely opens up perspective and doors.
And then on the way, because this is the starting point, and we have the ending point,
yeah.
And then there's on the way. On the way there's maintenance maybe needed. How does that work?
Yeah, so trial and error. We've now been at this for 4 years. We have 8 locations throughout the entire Silk Road where we can perform maintenance duties. So we do our pre-maintenance, obviously, to make sure that whenever we deliver a container set for preparation or set for shipment, that everything is confirmed to the conditions agreed to. But should the need arise, there are 8 locations throughout the entire corridor where we can perform the maintenance, whether that is top up of fuel, but that's already coordinated, so that's anticipated, but all non-anticipated or ad hoc requests from a maintenance perspective we can deal with on those locations. Those locations are mainly, let's say, at the borders, where there is time already spent by the train waiting to go either from one track to the other, or necessity in documentation arrangements. We take that time to perform maintenance if required. How does our maintenance team know there is a requirement? That goes through the channel here in Venlo, where we do the 24/7 tracking, tracing, have visibility on all those parameters that are essential. Those people here guide the maintenance team to the potential issues that are there. Currently we're developing a new rack of containers together with the University of Wageningen and Unit 45, as I'd mentioned earlier. Some of the things we're looking at is, for example, geofencing, to have that incorporated already in the unit itself. We're reducing where we can the weight of the container. So there's obviously a weight restriction on containers and the volume you carry. Everything that we can transfer from the container itself to the actual material you're transferring, the better it is. So we're looking into we're not looking into, we're actually transforming the containers as we speak. If you look at the air circulation throughout the unit, in old units or current units, it's a lot based on a, let's say, too limited stream or flow of air coming from one to two compartments. That's going to be much more spread out over the container itself. So when we do air temperature measurements, what we measure behind the latest or the last pallet versus the first will always give you a more or a better impression of what the actual temperature measures are going to be. We're trying to make the engines that drive the diesel motors more fuel efficient. Everybody is talking about trying to reduce carbon footprint. So besides the fact that we already use biodiesel and that the biodiesel is functional either in up to minus 40 degrees and plus 40 degrees, we're trying to make those efficiency steps as much as we can. So those are things that you will see incorporated in the new round of containers that are coming onto the market. Mature market is still far away. I'd love to believe that sometime next year volumes will continue to rise, which I'm sure they will. But I think we're all also favored by the fact that it's still a little bit controlled volume-wise, because there's a lot of investments, a lot of changes that need to be made on our side, but also on the customer side, or looking at talks with legislation, for example. That takes time, and I'm sure a lot of the changes that we are going to see next year and the year after have already been initiated in the past, so that's already part of the cycle. But I'd love to see a volume boom next year, but let's be realistic. To make it a mature market, it's going to take at least a couple of more years.